has in front of you is a 2020 Chevy Impala Premier package with 5,000 miles. Now, the Impala was originally introduced in the late 50s as Chevy's premier full-size sedan, and has evolved mildly since then, as there have been 10 generations of the Impala, this being a part of the 10th generation, which was invented in 2014. Now, this Premier package is the highest trim of the Impala, and the Impala is also the highest tier of the Chevy sedans, going from the Cruze to the Malibu to the Impala, as this is the full-size sedan. This Impala is equipped with a 3.6-liter V6 engine, and aside from that, it is a full-size sedan for any family. Pretty basic, but nonetheless, we're going to dive into the Impala, check it out, see how it drives, evaluate all of its features, and see where it falls in the Lemless evaluation scale. Stay tuned. Touching on the exterior of the 2020 Impala, as I said before, this is the Premier package, which is the highest trim of this vehicle. And as you can see, to kind of boast the luxury of your trim on the Impala, Chevy equips you with a lot of chrome amenities along the vehicle. As you can see, you have some chrome on the mirror, you have some chrome lining the door panels, you have some down below by the Impala badge. As you can see, there's some chrome on the door handles as well. And if you go in the back, there's some more chrome back here. Also, to boast the Premier package, Chevy puts a little badge right here by the iconic bow tie logo. And to boast that you have a V6 in this Impala opposed to their optional 4 cylinders, you have a little V6 badge on the left side of the rear as well. Another exterior feature that I want to point out on the Impala, one way to know if you're not a big car enthusiast and you're curious whether this is a Malibu, a Cruze, or an Impala, you can always tell which vehicle is an Impala by the iconic badge that Chevy has used for many decades. The Impala logo of the deer-like creature is fastened here, and there's a couple other ones on the inside that I'll later touch on as well. And one other exterior feature that I want to touch on is the overall rear size of the Impala. As you can see, the Impala is a pretty long sedan. The thing that really distinguishes the Impala to make it look very large is the trunk. It's almost like you took an extended bed of a pickup truck, but fastened that on a car, as the trunk of this thing is very huge, and it just kind of it displays on the overall exterior look of the Impala, as it just runs. It is a very long car itself. It's a bit of an odd exterior touch on Chevy's design. So opening up the trunk of the Impala, as I said, it is a full-size sedan, and you have an abundance of space back here in the trunk. You know, say you're going on a trip, you have an important business meeting, you have some big suitcase you gotta put in this thing. You have no fear. The Impala has a bunch of trunk space, you can fit a ton of stuff in. So, as I said before, you're getting all the storage you get with the full-size and the big wide trunk of the Impala. Moving to the interior of the Impala, one point I want to touch on for the interior is this weird swooping design along the dashboard of the Impala. If any of you have ever seen the interior of an old Toyota Previa minivan, this looks almost identical. It has this weird swooping design that just kind of adds a weird touch, kind of unique. It gives a bit of distinctness to the interior of the Impala, but just a bit odd that I wanted to point out. Another kind of odd touch on the interior of the Impala is just the sheer size of the steering wheel. The steering wheel of the Impala is about the equivalent in size to my Ford F-150, and the only other vehicle that I've driven that has a steering wheel of this size was an old Dodge Ram. Like, Chevy put a huge steering wheel in the Impala, and I know it's a full-size sedan, but I'm honestly curious if Chevy used the same steering wheel as they use in the Silverados and the Suburbans in their Impala, because this is just a huge steering wheel. Kind of weird. So moving into the cockpit of the 2020 Chevy Impala Premier, the parking brake is in a bit of an odd position opposed to most other sedans. Usually the parking brake of a vehicle is usually located somewhere in the center console, or it's an old-fashioned grab handle. However, in the 2020 Impala, Chevy puts it right here, right by the front air AC vent, but kind of an odd spot. It's almost like it was like a last-minute touch for them, but nonetheless, it's right there. Aside from that, you know, you have your headlight or your interior light dimmers right here, your trunk button right here, parking sensors right there, and you have a little change drawer in case you want to put, you know, change, pens, whatever, some small little accessories right here. It's a little pouch next to the steering wheel. Doesn't close very well, clearly. Moving to the gauge cluster of the 2020 Impala, as you can see, it's an older fashioned gauge cluster. It's not digital like most current cars, but nonetheless, it's fine. It's two very large gauges right here. You have your speedometer, your RPM gauge, and then instead of just fastening the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge next to the speedometer and the RPM gauge, Chevy kind of just shoved them back in the little tunnel right here. It's like you can actually put your fingers in, like, it's really deep actually. It's kind of weird. Nonetheless, that's the gauges in the Impala. And as I just said, the actual gauges in the Impala are not digital. However, Chevy does equip you with a small digital screen. And on the steering wheel, if you use this little button right here, you can scroll through various options you can display on the digital screen. You have your speedometer right here. You have your coolant temperature, your average speed, your PSI tire pressure gauges, oil life, fuel economy, fuel range, your trip odometer, and etc. Go back to the speedometer. Pretty basic stuff, nothing too fancy, but still decent features provided to you by Chevy. And as I mentioned in the Malibu video that I did a couple months ago, every Chevy logo equipped in their cars, whether it is the massive logo equipped on the grille, the trunk, or even on the steering wheel, every Chevy bow tie is embossed, and it's kind of weird. I honestly have no idea why Chevy does this. It's kind of an odd feature, but yet it's kind of cool at the same time that every Chevy logo on any modern Chevy is embossed. Nonetheless, bit of an odd touch, but I just like to point that out. So moving to the center console of the Impala, in the digital age of technology and cell phones, you might want to have a charger to charge your phone. And while there is a wireless pad to charge your phone right here, which is very nice, say you have a USB, you might wonder where the hell is the outlet. And it is in disguise right here, but don't worry, Chevy does equip you with a USB outlet, but it's kind of hidden. The way Chevy puts the USB outlet in this vehicle is they hide it behind the center screen. You press this button right here, and the screen whirs open to display this massive storage area. And if you look in there, that is where you will find your majestic hidden USB port. Kind of odd for Chevy, but I don't know, in case you want to hide your outlet from somebody, I guess that's a nice feature on Chevy's part. I don't know, kind of weird. So moving to the screen of the Impala, it's a pretty basic screen, and I will say there's not a lot of lag, as you can see as I flip back and forth. It's pretty adapted to the touch. For the most part, it's a little laggy at some points, but it's not horrible. Basically, it's a generic screen, and it's not as nice as a modern Mercedes-Benz, a BMW, or a Volvo, but overall, it's pretty fine. If you want to see a more in-depth review of the overall screen, check out my Malibu review. It is pretty much the identical thing to this. Nonetheless, it's a fine screen for a 2020 vehicle. It's okay. So moving into the rear of the 2020 Impala Premier, as I said before, this is a full-size sedan, so there is a plethora of legroom. I'm about 5'10", 5'11", give or take. I can stretch my feet all the way out. There is just a plentiful amount of room. The seat is pushed fairly far back. It's spacious, so if you're going on a long ride, if you're sitting in the back seat, no need to fear. You'll have a lot of comfort and legroom, which is pretty nice. Also back here, in case your rear seat passengers want some beverages, pull this little tray down right here. You have two pretty decent sized cup holders in the back and a little kind of armrest in case you're not putting cups here to rest your arm on a long road trip or journey. So pretty nice basic features on Chevy's part in the rear seat of the Impala. So one last other feature I want to point out in the rear interior of the Impala, instead of having your typical USB outlet right here, as you can see, it is your generic wall outlet. So in case you don't have a USB, Chevy equips you with a full-size outlet in case you want to bring your toaster along, or if not, you know, bring in your normal outlet in case you don't have a USB. Pretty nice feature, nothing too fancy, but courtesy of Chevy. A Chevy Impala Premier. Right off the bat, I will say, this car, it doesn't feel horribly wide, honestly. Like, it's definitely wider than like a regular sedan, but the main factor I want to touch on or emphasize is that it feels very long. Like, it feels like I just got like a line of car behind me. It is a very long car that I haven't really experienced since I drove the S-Class. The S-Class did feel bigger, but it's pretty close in size to this. In comparison with the Malibu that I drove, it feels a little bit quicker than the Malibu, but it also has a little bit more comfort. Like, the Impala is surprisingly comfortable, and don't get me wrong, I know it's like, you know, the Premier package, but for a generic Chevy sedan, it's got pretty solid comfort that I will commend Chevy on. The driving's fine, you know, it handles fine. It's nothing exciting, it's not sharp, but it's it'll get you from point A to point B. It's your generic sedan. As I said before, the steering wheel is very large. You know, Chevy does make you feel that it is a big car. Even the turn signal dials are very wide and like chunky. You know, it's an American car, so you know, we kind of want to emphasize that big, you know, American power size, even though the Impala does not have the glorious design that it once was. For those of you who are not as much of a car enthusiast as me, if you saw the movie Cars, Ramon, the spray-painted lowrider dude, is the original Impala. Really cool design of the original look. Fine for now in the modernized Impala, but nothing, you know, too flashy, as it is a generic American sedan. By no means is it quick. It's a large, full-size American sedan with a V6 engine. It's fine. It's a pretty quiet ride, honestly. Like, it's not very loud, which is nice. You know, for most people who drive this vehicle are probably not going to be enthusiasts. Odds are it would be your typical commuter or just a, you know, a die-hard Chevy person who wants a simple car that will last them a decent amount of time as long as it's operated and maintained properly. I mean, this car is great for someone who, you know, isn't huge on technology, because like I said, the tech isn't over, you know, too complicated. It's simple. It's your generic. It's got everything you would want. Nothing over the line and dramatic, but it's fine. The overall layout of the driver's position, it's a little bit tight. Honestly, it feels, it's weird because it is a big car, but the driver's position seems a little bit tight. But overall, it's fine. Visibility is pretty good as well. You got a pretty long hood, actually, and like I said, the car is pretty long itself. I'm on a pretty narrow road. You know, it'll fit, but it's bigger than your normal sedan. But overall, though, you know, it's got solid comfort. You know, you can definitely go cruise in this thing for a little while. But and the turning radius in this thing is also pretty fine. It feels light for as big of a car that it truly is. So if you want a generic sedan, you know, it's pretty comfortable. Get you from point A to point B, have all your basic amenities. The Impala is a fine car for you. It's now time for the interview section, in which I answer 6 generic questions one would ask going to purchase a vehicle. Question number 1 is, do I like the Impala? My answer is neutral. I don't love this thing. I don't hate this thing. It's a very generic sedan, so give it like a maybe. It's okay. So that's my opinion. Question number 2 is, what is my favorite feature about the Impala? And overall, let's say it is the overall comfort of this vehicle. Like I said before, you got some pretty meaty seats in this big, full-size American sedan. It is much more comfortable than I assumed it would be. So I would say my favorite feature of the 2020 Impala Premier is the comfort. Question number 3 of the interview section is, what is my least favorite feature about the 2020 Impala? That would have to be the manual shift lever if you were to use it. When you put this thing in manual, upshift or downshift, you have to physically push the buttons itself. Kind of a bit of a weird feature instead of pushing paddle shifters, which this car does not have. So that would probably be my least favorite feature if you were to drive this in manual. Question number 4 of the interview section is, what is the most interesting or quirky part about the Impala? That would have to be the hidden USB port. As I mentioned before, you press this button, this thing wears up, and it's a hidden USB thing. This might be good, as it could deter people from driving with their phones in their hands, but it's still a bit of an odd feature on Chevy's part. Question number 5 is the Impala Premier worth its value? And honestly, I would say no. Don't get me wrong, you're getting a lot of leather, you're getting some screen, you're getting a full-size sedan for $37,000, but you could probably get a base model luxury sedan with even better features and more luxury for a cheaper price. Not saying it's a bad car, but I think it's a little bit pricey for a car like this for $37,000. Question number 6 of the interview section is, would I ever want or own an Impala? And the answer is no. Like I said, I personally don't dislike this vehicle, but being that I am a truck person and I'm not a sedan person, if I were to buy a sedan, I would much rather prefer a cheaper luxury model, or a base model luxury thing like a 3 Series, an A-Class, something similar, opposed to the Impala. So that's what I'd rather prefer instead of this.